What would happen to DoorDash, Uber, and Lyft during a recession? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, this is going to be backed by science and statistics, a lot of research that I've put in to find out exactly what would happen to gig economy employees, drivers, and workers, as well as the companies. So if you enjoyed this video and find it useful, go ahead and hit that like button, and let's go ahead and hop into it. So a lot of big financial firms are forecasting a recession in 2020, and some developments actually happened today. The yield curve has been inverted, which is a common signal that we might be seeing some sort of recession-like signals, and it's put a lot of fear into the stock market. Today, the market dropped by almost 3%, and Uber's stock dropped 6% to a new all-time low. So let's first take a look at exactly how this could impact drivers, people that work for DoorDash, Uber, and Lyft. And common sense tells us that during a recession, consumers are going to cut back on a lot of their expenses. So this could easily impact gig economy companies like DoorDash, Uber, and Lyft, and we could see less orders coming in. So let's break down exactly how this impacts different segments of the gig economy. And let's start with food delivery. So I pulled up some information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics based on how consumers behave during a recession. And more specifically, we're going to first take a look at how consumers eat, how they consume food. And according to the stats, consumers start eating more food at home as opposed to food away from home. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're ordering food from home. It means that they're more likely cooking that food at home. So they're going to be less likely to dine out at restaurants, and this could be a big factor for food delivery drivers. We could see less orders coming in, and there could be, just less work out there for companies like DoorDash, Grubhub, and Postmates. Now let's take a look at how this could impact Uber and Lyft drivers. So the statistics that I pulled up were based on travel, and more specifically airline travel. So it's not necessarily a great indicator of how Lyft and Uber are going to be affected. But according to these stats, during the last recession of 2008, travel on airlines actually did not decrease that much. So this doesn't necessarily cross over to Uber and Lyft. We could see travel remaining the same, but types of travel changing. For example, we could see more people taking mass public transportation as opposed to Uber and Lyft. It's really hard to judge here because Uber and Lyft weren't really around before the last recession, so we can't really do much to predict other than gauge other factors that would likely influence the usage of these companies in such a scenario. And the last category that I want to take a look at is other gigs such as TaskRabbit and Tackle, kind of like just the other category of like handyman gigs. And a lot of these are based upon minor repairs and kind of like household chores that you can do for people. And one of the categories that we can look at is new housing development, new home builds. A lot of time this creates demand for workers, for independent contractors and handyman to kind of perform tasks around people's houses, and this would definitely decrease. That's a lot of what we saw in the last recession. So you would expect some decrease there, and you would also expect certain homeowners to start doing some of those tasks themselves as they cut back in their spending. And once again, you can't exactly predict how this is going to happen because every recession, every time there's a pullback in the market, things behave differently. And the last recession was based around a housing crisis, but you might not necessarily see similar factors in a future recession. So now that we've taken a look at how this could impact the employees, the independent contractors in the gig economy, let's take a look at how this impacts the companies. So let's first take a look at Uber, which, as I mentioned earlier, saw a pretty big price decrease in their stock today. And that's because in Q2, the second quarter of this year, they had a $5 billion loss. So, that's in a fairly strong economy. So looking at a company like this in a weaker economy, odds are that their losses would increase, and this could be actually devastating for a company like Uber. In an environment where it's more difficult to turn a profit, companies would look to raise funds, but it may be more difficult to pull together investors when the economy is not as good. People would not want to be investing their money as things appear to be slowing. So just one more reason why this could become a difficult scenario for Uber to face. So let's take a look at DoorDash, another company that could be greatly affected by a downturn. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people spend more time eating at home, less time going out to restaurants, and less time ordering out in an economic downturn. So DoorDash could also take a hit here. Their margins are already pretty slim, and they also do a lot of promotions to subsidize new users and to get people ordering food at discounted rates. But it's likely they wouldn't be able to do as much of this during an economic downturn, which could further impact their growth. If they're not bringing new people in with promotions, it would be harder to grow in a period like this. One thing that we could also expect to see during a recession is less acquisitions. So DoorDash recently acquired Caviar, and moves like this tend to happen, in a good, healthy market. But if the market is in a recession, then there would be no reason to really acquire companies. Companies that have cash strong positions would most likely wait out a recession, wait to buy at a low when struggling companies can be bought at a cheaper price. So most importantly, what does this mean for you if you're a gig economy worker, if you drive for Lyft or Uber, or you deliver for DoorDash? Well, it means that you should probably be at least planning for or thinking about a scenario like this. You can't live your life in fear of a recession, but you can plan ahead accordingly. You can put money aside, because at the end of the day, you're an on-demand worker, and the key word here is demand. In a recession, there is less of that. There's less orders out there, so it becomes harder, to meet that quota every day of orders or rides that you want to take, and thus it becomes harder to earn that income that you were previously earning. So with that said, always have a backup plan, always save some money, put some money aside, because it's important to be prepared for scenarios like this. And let me know down below what your plan is, if you're setting money aside, saving money, if you have a backup plan, if there happens to be a downturn in the economy, because I always love to hear what your strategy is. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. And once again, hit that like button if you have not yet.